Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join a little bit of Hebrew as we continue in the book of Jonah, chapter 1. And we're looking at verse 3 today. And you can see on your screen, we have a split screen. On the left side is the Bible Hub with the Hebrew, with the interlinear underneath it. And then on the right side is a commentary that we've been following that just has so many wonderful insights. So today's portion of this lesson, Jonah flees. And so the Hebrew would sound maybe a little something like this: Vayakam Yonah Livaroach Tarshisha Milifene Yudhe Vavhe, or the divine name, and then Vayired Yafol. And so he was running from or fleeing from the presence of, and many times it'd be translated as God, but the word here is the tetragrammaton, the Yud He Vav He, which emphasizes the merciful and compassionate attributes of God. So he was fleeing from the mercies of God, basically. And what's interesting here is how we're going to see Jonah feels he can run, but what was he running from? So that's where we go into our text here. We'll take a look at the JPS first before we go and look into the commentators on the right side. The JPS would say he rose up to flee. He recognized that his mission had a redemptive purpose, which is why the Tetragrammaton, the Yud He Vav He for the name of God was mentioned, I believe. And again, what was Jonah's heart? Why was he doing this? And he knew that Nineveh was a non-Jewish location. Here it says that Jonah did not wish that they should be saved. That's what the rabbinic explanation was. He foresaw that Assyria would become a destroyer of Israel. And so he was trying to protect the Israelites. Okay, that's a nice explanation. Let's take a look at the other text here. Basically, what makes Jonah run? And so um, the question asked is, how could Jonah have done such a thing? How could he have run away from God, um, as we know, but probably find difficulty in practicing, is that you can't run from the presence of God. I guess as a human being and knowing how emotions go, there are times that we feel we are maybe hidden. There are times when we often feel that God doesn't see us. Um, so there's numerous thought processes going on in here, that God sees everything, God knows everything, God knows where we are. You obviously can't run from him, as David says in the Psalms, where can I flee from his presence? If I go to the highest heaven, he's there. If I go to the lowest depths of the earth, he's there. But yet in our humanity, we struggle with that concept of the omnipresence of God and the omniscience of God, the all-knowing and all-encompassing, existing everywhere. So here we try to just see, what was Jonah thinking. So one of the commentators say the obvious explanation is that Jonah fled because he was afraid what would happen to him if he did what God asked of him. He was afraid that if he went to Nineveh, the Ninevites would kill him, or perhaps they would torture and then kill him. So now we look at some of the other commentators who offer a variety of explanations for Jonah's flight. So let's go on this little ride. One of the ancient commentators from the Middle Ages, Kimchi, says that Jonah fled to avoid embarrassing the Israelites, and how the Israelites always had prophets come to them, but they usually always ignored the prophets. So he didn't want to embarrass the Israelites by going somewhere where the people who were not chosen by God would obey the prophets, and the Israelites did not obey. Okay, I guess that's a good one. Here's Arbanel. He is a commentator from the Middle Ages in Spain, one I particularly like. He's got some really nice things to say. Here he says that Jonah understands the truth of the matter and then concludes in his heart he will not go to Nineveh, so that the people of Assyria will not be saved from destruction by him. kind of what the JPS version would say, is that he was protecting Israel, protecting the nation of Israel. But again, very challenging to think of wanting, um, of knowing when destruction is going to happen to, first of all, the Israelites, but then also destruction to a nation that's not your own. And this quandary that you're put in, um, the loss of life and the respect for life. And I think we see that in our world today, of what's going on in Iran, what's going on in Israel, what's going on in the Middle East, of feeling that you strike and you uh, take lives in an area where they are threatening you, and you're doing it to prevent them from taking your lives. And it's the horribleness of life, of civilization, of where we are and where humanity has always been, with the oppressed and the oppressor, and those that are trying to survive and those that are taking advantage of others. So again, this is just another episode in that saga. So that's what Abarbanel says. Here he continues by saying that Jonah placed the honor of the people of Israel over the honor of God. He portrays Jonah as a hero, sacrificing himself for the benefit of the people of Israel. And that's what we're going to see here, is that um, the Jewish writers are always trying to defend Jonah. Of course, he was Jewish and he was their prophet. And you find when you are aligned with something, you usually stand in defense of it, even if they have obvious flaws or things are going on that are difficult to question. Um, we see that everywhere. People will defend those who they feel aligned with. And so here, what's interesting is this Jewish commentator brings up some of the commentaries of the early Christian writers. And here, some of these, they're called the church fathers, but they're just uh, Christian leaders from the fourth and fifth century. And during that time, there was quite a battle between Judaism and Christianity. This is time leading up to the Crusades. There were pogroms, horrible things of fighting between the um, ecclesiastical church at the time, the church that was in power and ruling not only just religious areas, but also countries, and how the Jews were not received well, and they were ostracized and um, just victimized by Christianity. So here, one of the reasons for that was how the church fathers argued the superiority of Christianity over Judaism, because of what they saw here with Jonah, how Jonah preferred his own nation rather than the nation that was not like him. And so they look at the nationalistic Judaism in contrast to the universal faith of Christianity. Kind of interesting how um, nationalism and universalism, and how that's changes through time, and where we are at today with that thinking, where again trying to be kingdom minded. God's kingdom is that we are all children of God, and that we are all created in His image and His likeness, and in God's kingdom, there are no boundaries. There are no differentiations made because of uh, your skin color or your background or your ethnicity. And it's interesting to see how this came to light in the Middle Ages, as was something that the Christian leaders took notice of, and knew that it was a hallmark of Christianity, was the universal faith that extended beyond borders and nations and countries. And so they argued that Job didn't want to go because they were not like him, they were non-Israelites. And they bring up some other commentaries here. Paul's epistle to the Romans, that he is the God of all nations, not only the Jewish nations. And so the Jewish commentators do not refer directly to these Christian defenders, or polemics as they're called, And so it's just something very interesting to see the different viewpoints that they're taking on this. What we do recognize, though, is Jonah did not want to go to Nineveh, whatever his reasons were. He thought he could run from the presence of God. Another interesting point here is this word, melifne, means from the face of. This unpacking this is a very interesting, so it's not just the presence, it's the face of. But remembering that God is spirit, and God does not have a face as a spirit does not have a face. So that's why it's translated presence. But yet there are instances where sometimes it's helpful for us as humans to visualize that. And that's why a lot of this anthropomorphism or assigning human attributes to spiritualistic spiritual words helps us to think of what it would be like to see the face of God and to see what happens when you please him or when you disappoint him. The one episode that comes to mind is when Peter betrayed Jesus um, before he was led away to be crucified, that it says that Peter's eyes and Jesus's eyes met, and that he looked into Jesus's face, having just betrayed him, and that the result of that encounter and those eyes meeting was that Peter ran out and wept bitterly. And I kind of put myself in that place here of you know being able to see the face of God and know when you're in his presence. And again, our desire is not to break God's heart. It's not to do anything that would cause him to be disappointed in us or be ashamed of us or feel like we've betrayed him in any way. And so I see that tie in here as Jonah was trying to run from the face of, from the presence of a merciful and loving God, doing what he wanted to do. So that's where we're going to stop with this portion. We're going to see how the story transpires after this. But I thank you for being a part of this study and pray that God will richly bless you and encourage you today. Bye bye.